All the dancers were really separated from the people that have been there for 30 years. And so that was the first time that we were hearing like how people were actually treated in Shekinah. And that for me was like a big turning point.
Hi, and just a few moments ago, we saw a caravan of vehicles leaving this property 10 from what I. If you take a look behind me, you can see the gate is knocked down. This is on the 7700 block of McGroarty Street in Tahunga. It was raided earlier this morning. This is where a search warrant was served.
Hey besties, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. Okay, I've been over on my Instagram. If you're not following me over there, make sure that you do. But there's a developing and breaking story, and it has to do with Robert Shinn. If you recall, last week I did an update with you guys about my lawsuit where Robert Shinn was suing me, and I was discussing how the judge was going to allow us to do a motion to reconsider. Well, it looks like the civil stuff is about to get just thrown out because Robert Shinn and his entire church slash cult is currently under investigation by the FBI, and his property was raided this morning. So here's the details. Robert Shinn is a pastor that runs a church called Shekinah Church. The church is accused of running a scheme where Robert, as the leader, sets up all of these different businesses, and then he lures young people into his church via promises of fame and wealth. And then he himself takes all of the money, has them donate all of the money back to him through the church. And then he has them working for him basically for next to nothing. Robert also is accused of housing them in homes with senior members of the church who monitor everything that they do and say. He's also accused of money laundering, tax evasion, mail fraud, and this specific search warrant also includes trafficking that involves women. Now, if you watch the Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok cult, which I helped make on Netflix, you know that there was numerous people from the church that were interviewed and shared their stories, including Priscilla Lee, who was one of these alleged victims. The series basically detailed that Robert had, through his son Isaiah, been able to get in touch with a group of dancers that were in Los Angeles, many of whom had very high profiles, had been featured on, So You Think You Can Dance and World of Dance, who were well known and were doing a lot in the industry. And through Isaiah, he was able to infiltrate this sector of this community, and he was able to recruit dancers like James B Dash Derrick and Concrete and Tight Eyes and Vic White. Vic White's probably the most visible of all of them. And for all of you wondering if Vic is still involved in the church, yes, the answer is yes. And all of these individuals, including Miranda Derrick, who is still in the cult to this day, all of them are being trafficked for labor and or intimate non-consensual contact with Robert or other men in the group. Robert was also accused of arranging marriages, controlling their daily lives down to where they live, who their phone plans, the cars they drive, who what they do on a day-to-day basis, and making them monitor their activities and report them back to their quote unquote mentors. So today, what went down was the FBI, along with the US Postal Service and El Monte's tactical team. El Monte Police Department is the police department that issued the search warrant on the property. They went to the property at 7744 McGroarty. This property is a home that's right next to a large abandoned school that they were going to convert into a church. Now, they ran into a bunch of issues with permitting and within the community to convert it and even to upgrade it. But this property is sort of a compound where Robert forces many of his followers to live. And while the FBI, the SWAT teams, and the law enforcement were searching the property, several members were detained and taken into custody. From what I can tell you, based upon the identities of the people that I know, we were able to confirm that Isaiah Shinn, his son, the one that is the videographer that was always seen with James Derrick and Miranda Derrick and is always tagged on their videos, he was in custody. A man named Young Bin Kim, who is the husband of Shirley Kim, the lawyer that works for Robert Shin. Shirley Kim was seen holding a baby, and she was also taken into custody. And then there was Luke Song, who's a member that works on the grounds. Matthew Shin, who is the now leading member, and he runs their real estate empire. And so he's the one that finds all the housing and rents out the properties to the various members and controls where they live. And he's also the main mentor for the men, and he's the next in line. So he's like Robert's number two next to his son Isaiah. So we saw at least 4 to 5 people that we recognized in custody. We also saw young Bin Kim being walked by police with his hands zip tied. Shirley Kim was seen holding a baby sitting on a sort of chair outside of a patio door, wiping her tears and her eyes. But don't be fooled by Shirley. She is ruthless. She is cruel, and I have firsthand experience with how controlling that woman is and how dangerous she is. So anyone that is going to play the victim in here, and to a degree, they came in as Robert's, you know, followers, and they were all lured into him, but the people that stayed willingly stayed, and they helped him commit crimes. This syndicate does not exist without Robert and the followers doing his bidding for him. So, because I've been covering this story for literally 3 years and 5 months, and I am being sued by Robert, and I know a ton of people involved in this case, and I helped make the series Dancing for the Devil 7M TikTok cult, and my contacts in this case are extensive. I can tell you a few things factually. The FBI was tipped off several years ago. In fact, multiple reports were made to the FBI. Obviously, on the series, you saw Kelly and Dean Wilkins speak with them, but I also know that other former members have reported him to the FBI. And then in 2022, I can say with confidence that he was reported to the IRS. And insiders from within the church had tipped off the IRS about the money laundering and the tax evasion. And there was an investigation that started in 2022 with the IRS. And that was a story for a while. And then obviously, these kinds of investigations take a very long time. But today's was a full search of the property that's located in Tahunga. It is where the church is located. It's a abandoned school that used to be for like a Christian school that they were going to convert into a church. There's also a home that sits on the property where several of his followers live, including Isaiah, his son, Matthew, his second in charge, Shirley, his ex-wife and his attorney, and then Matthew Shin. And young Ben, Shirley's quote unquote husband. So they say that it's for sex trafficking and money laundering. And the reporters that were on the scene, they said that they saw at least 7 people that were detained. Now, I don't know if anyone was arrested. And then Melanie Lee, who is a part of the series, was on Instagram, and she said that she had been told that Robert's property in Porter Ranch, which is the home that he lives in, had been raided. And because it's an ongoing investigation, we have no idea if anyone's been arrested yet. But what I can say, based on my own experience, is that so Robert is suing me, and it wasn't more than like 6 months ago, maybe a little bit longer. No, it was like last summer. We did depositions in my lawsuit, and he's suing me for like defamation and business and interference and all this crap. It's bogus. But we deposed Miranda and James Derrick. And some of the details about the depositions were revealed in my summary judgment, and then transcripts of that deposition were provided to the court in Minnesota. I don't know if they're still listed as confidential or not, but I want to just say something. The deposition for me was I had the opportunity to watch Miranda and James answer questions, and it was terrifying. Um, Kelly Wilking in the series Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok cult, has stated that it's like her daughter isn't even there. It's like she's a void. It's like she's just this programmed thing that is afraid to say anything and is scared. And it's like she's there, but she's not there. And then the one person that is there is like this nasty, mean girl that lies all the time. And what I noticed was both James and Miranda lied blatantly. They also, in my opinion, appeared very coached in their answers. And then they were doing things like not even knowing how to answer basic questions and asking the attorneys to like rephrase questions over and over and over again. But I think what scared me the most was that James Derrick was terrified during the deposition. That was my impression. He was so nervous that was he said he was anxious. He said he was scared. He didn't want to answer the questions wrong. And multiple times he asked to take breaks. And while he was being deposed, Shirley Kim was literally monitoring him. So on our video, we could see we were on a remote login. And so you could see who was watching. And Shirley logged in because she was representing them as an attorney, even though she's in California and the deposition was done in Minnesota. And he would come back and it was like he would have the answers and they were very coached answers. And then they made statements that were just flat out like lies. Like they both denied being a part of the church, but then they also both acknowledged that they knew and had heard about the sex trafficking and they had been aware that Robert had been accused of sexual battery. James had made a comment that, a lot of men are accused, but we're all sinners. And just because we do something doesn't mean we're wrong. It was very, very disheartening. And Miranda was asked by us point blank if she was aware that Robert had been accused of rape and sex trafficking. And she said yes. And she also had told us that she was not a victim of his. And we hope that that's the truth. We really do. We hope that that's the truth, but we don't know. We really don't know. We have heard so many other stories from people on the inside about that have been watching what's going on. So my experience watching this, and these depositions were over like 2 separate days. They were like 5, 6 hours each. And it was obvious to me that they were not there on their own will. Like, they didn't even know really what the lawsuit was about. It was clear that they weren't really even aware that they were suing me outside of what they had been told. That was my impression. And it was my impression too that they were being very controlled by how they answered questions. It was like someone was feeding them this what to say. The answers were not their own. It was scary. I felt really bad. Um so we don't know like what's happening with the dancers. We don't know the people that we saw detained were not the dancers because they don't live on the compound, at least not most of them. Robert lives in Porter Ranch and Miranda and James live about 45 minutes away from the church. And people I've talked to have tried to reach out to Miranda and James today, and they have not heard back from them in any capacity. Miranda has completely cut off her family since the docuseries and rarely even talks to them, but is in touch with her grandmother, I guess. Um, and then locals that are in the area sent me videos of them driving around the area. Both gates have been completely smashed open. The property right now is completely vacant. It's quiet. It doesn't appear that anyone is there. So it even though no arrests have been made, it doesn't look like anyone's at the property. So do what you will. And while this was going on, and I've been editing, the LA Times just updated with some information directly from law enforcement. And it is saying that federal agents in relation to raided the home of and the compound of Robert Shinn in connection with an investigation into sex trafficking, money laundering, and other accusations, according to authorities. um, the U.S. Postal Service, Internal Revenue Service, and U.S. Department of Labor served a warrant at the home around 6 a.m., according to the El Monte Police Department, which is provided assistance along with the FBI. So it's the USPS, Internal Revenue Service, and U.S. Department of Labor and the FBI. The search was related to allegations of sex trafficking, money laundering, tax evasion, and COVID pandemic era related fraud. SWAT officers were at the scene to assist. And then Patricia Mendoza said in a prepared statement that the U.S. Postal Inspection Service is working closely with our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners on this ongoing investigation. This remains an active case, and we are continuing to gather and review information. Sources familiar with the investigation say the federal warrant is connected with the alleged cult featured in the Netflix docuseries. Several people were handcuffed, but nobody was arrested, and the investigation remains ongoing. So right now, there is an active investigation. The details of the search warrant remain under seal in federal court. And generally, once there's a warrant done, it's one of the last steps that they have to take in order to get the charges going. But they have to do the search warrant, they get the evidence, and they have to get the federal indictment. So at this point, it's basically they're put on notice that they're under investigation, they're investigating sex trafficking, and it's only a matter of time before arrests will happen. So, Robert Shinn, your day is coming. I will keep you up to date as I learn more. So let me know in your thoughts in the comments below. Please make sure to hit the bell. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for the latest updates, and let me know what your thoughts are. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, besties.